All right. My name is Ian MacRae. I'm president of Ian Computers, and we're going to be starting our webinar using data to drive business insights, alignment, and success. A little bit about my background and what got me interested in putting together today's webinar. I own a company that performs the IT department functions for about 50 area businesses. We service Washington, D.C. and the state of Virginia. And the IT department functions that we perform are all operational IT. So we do everything from help desk to network infrastructure, cloud, all the way through putting together strategic technology plans. You know, what technology trends are coming in the marketplace today, and what systems can you put in place to better your business, and what do you have to do to maintain the systems you have. So all of that has been really wonderful for our customers, but one of the things that we don't do is provide chief information officer roles. So we don't work with clients to we're not an expert in their business in the sense that we don't know the data side of their business. So that's why we have a partner today, Jonathan Tunner, who has a background in finance and in data analytics, and he can really pick up where we leave off. So we often understand all the rich data sources that a client has, but not necessarily how to really put those all together in a management dashboard for their business. So we're really excited to form a partnership with Jonathan and to learn more about how using data to drive business insights and alignment to success is possible today. So with that introduction, Jonathan, would you like to tell more about yourself and get us started today?
Yeah, absolutely. And Ian, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great introduction, and I'm super excited to be here. And it's a great day when you get to speak to people about the things that you're passionate about. And this is an area where I have a lot of passion. But I do want to thank you and your team, and also my team for helping make all of this come together. Really, the goal for today is to have all the listeners walk away with something that they can use in their business. And so whether you use Excel, or maybe you have an existing analytics platform, maybe you have a large B2B business, or maybe you have a retail storefront, we try to come up with things that everyone could use, irrespective of their industry or size of business, or what sort of technology that they have in place. So just a quick background about myself. So after 20 years as a chief financial officer and as a CEO, I took some time to explore an area that I had always been passionate about, but never really had the time to study formally, and that was data. So how did I get there? So formally, as a CFO of a large investment company and as a flexible executive tasked with helping our companies improve, I used data in absolutely everything that I did. I didn't call it data, right? That wasn't the term that we used back then, but it was really spending hours reviewing reports and spreadsheets, looking for insights, as I'm sure many of you do on a regular, if not daily basis. But through that process, I thought there's got to be a better way to utilize data to understand and manage businesses. When I started Constellation Partners, Constellation has always been dedicated to helping companies grow and transform and be a catalyst for their continued success. And so we had to develop ways to very quickly dive into the guts of a company. In addition to conversations we'd have with the management teams, is how do we quickly and deeply understand a business? And about 5 years ago, I ran across a small company that had an ad in the Wall Street Journal promising to get rid of spreadsheets and to connect all of your data together and turn spreadsheets into visual analytics. And I was completely hooked. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and it would solve a lot of problems. What I didn't know back then was that the industry had a long way to go, but it was the emergence of the modern field that we see today of data science. Today, there's been an explosion of accessible and affordable tools and services that really had only been previously available to much larger, more sophisticated companies like ExxonMobil or Target or Mercedes-Benz, with reams of statisticians and programmers and mathematicians on their payroll. So for me, over the past 5 years, what I've been doing is combining really the best of both. Traditional management consulting with the power of analytics. And we use that to transform businesses through what we call business performance consulting. So brief agenda so that all of you guys know what you're getting into today. We're going to quickly go over, and because I have about 30 minutes, and I want to keep everybody engaged, so we'll move through this quickly. Oh, and by the way, please take notes and jot down any questions, and we'll get to it at the end of the webinar. But the program for today is to get into analytics, right? Looking at the basic landscape and use cases and kind of the data state of the union within businesses, uncovering the treasure in your own backyard, which is your existing data, enhancing your data to make it even more valuable and insightful. How do you create a basic roadmap for alignment and measurable success? And then ultimately, how could you migrate your business to becoming data-driven? So let's talk about analytics, and we're going to start with data and software and things like that, but I'm going to try to make it really relevant for everybody here. So data is everywhere, right? It's like this thing that's just flowing around your business all the time. The issue is that it's not where you can easily make sense of it. If you look at these different software programs here, and I think probably you'll recognize almost all of them. Here we have some accounting software with QuickBooks or Sage, point of sale systems like Square and Clover, a CRM and marketing tool like Salesforce. You have Twitter, Facebook, things like Google Analytics. That's really the back end stats behind your website. These are all amazing tools. This is actually a very representative technology ecosystem that we run into, right? Accounting, point of sale, CRM, social, website. And this is all wonderful, except the challenge here is that the data for QuickBooks and for Square and for Salesforce and Twitter, they all live in different ponds, right? Each one of these is its own unique little pond of information. Ideally, it should all live in one big lake, right? But that's just not the case. And so the struggle with accessing the data is, number one, is that the data lives in these different environments and it's not connected. And the second one is that each one of these programs basically limits the user, because of the reports that you run, how much of the data you can really see. So what ends up happening is simply that CEOs and management teams and leadership teams see that this is really a time-consuming issue to overcome, and it becomes a luxury item. It's a nice-to-have item rather than a business priority, okay? So this is the business data that you have within your four walls. Okay, now let's look at a different data landscape. Okay, when you look at this, you'll notice, this isn't stuff that we have within our four walls. This is data, right? Information that's coming out of the Federal Reserve, interest rate data. It could be demographic data from the US Census. It could be survey data from Michigan. It could be weather data from NOAA. Okay, it's financial, it's spatial, it's satellite, it's consumer data, it's climate, right? All kinds of different data that lives outside your company. But it's very manageable, it's very understandable, and with the right tools, it can be incredibly valuable if you combine it with your existing data. So this is external data, and this is your internal data. Okay, so good distinction there. Okay, just a couple of terms that everyone may have heard of, and just to provide some type of clarification, the difference between analytics and business intelligence. The goal of analytics is to improve businesses by gaining knowledge, okay, which can be used to make improvements or changes, right? Better, faster decisions. Intelligence, or BI, as you might have heard, It's really the strategies and technologies used by the company for the data analysis of business information. Okay, they're really kind of two different terms, but for our purposes, when we say analytics, we can mean both, and that's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the more fun stuff here. When I talk about uncovering the treasure in your backyard, right now we're batting 1,000. In every instance, when I look at someone's data and then I go and I do a download with the CEO and a historical analysis of that data, they will almost unanimously say, or actually we are batting 1,000 and say, oh, I didn't know that. There'll be elements of it that they didn't know, insights that they didn't have. Okay, and that's why I call it kind of the treasure that's in your backyard, and that's why it's really important to access that data. So I thought what I would do is I would use one of our clients. It's going to be the best way to show you how our process works, and we'll call him Greg for today's purposes, right? To protect the innocent. His real name is Scott, but we'll call him Greg for today. He's been in business for over 20 years, very experienced B2B products company owner. When we started working with Greg, he had 11 years of transactional data, very detailed, great information. He was struggling though when it came to us. His sales were declining and flat, and the company wasn't doing what he wanted it to do, and he wasn't able to find ways to get traction. His motivation was frankly not that great because he had, wasn't feeling good about life with his business, and frankly he was looking at selling the company. So the use case here was really stagnant, declining revenue. What we had to solve that, and struggling to know where to focus because he had a limited amount of time and he had limited resources that he could kind of throw at this problem. Okay, let's get into some graphics here. This is probably incredibly familiar for all of you. Typically a management report, when you run a report in your software and it spits out something in the printer, it's going to look like this, right? The manufacturer, what did they buy? When did they buy it? How much of it? What did it cost? Or maybe it comes out in the data table that looks like this. Okay, but this is the world that most businesses live in. Okay, they live in a world where they're using management reports and spreadsheets, and that's all great, but that's what this environment looks like. Greg gave us 11 years worth of information that looked like this, right? 5,000 rows of data. Okay, and so our first step is, so for Greg and for all of our clients, we do a data and systems audit. All right, what we want to do is we want to understand what's the software that he's using, how do we get access to this, okay? And when we look at the data, is it consistent? Is it complete? Is it accurate? And then looking at the tools that he already has in place, what other data could he capture, or what other processes could we change to begin to capture some better information? So kind of the first bullet point here, if you want a good takeaway, the more data, the better, okay? And not to the point where you're killing yourself every day to get information, or data rather, but the more the better, right? Don't skimp. Great example, if you sell something, don't just annotate the date of when you sold it, also put down the time. And the reason why is that you can use that to really develop insights about buying patterns, okay? And it can have a real impact on your business. Perfect case in point about a client that had a ton of data, but was missing some key data. Okay, another important bullet point. So a really experienced CEO, 20 years in the business, had 20,000 customers a year coming through his location. Software system was filled with really, really, really good information. And what he asked us to do was to, among other things, perform a detailed customer segmentation analysis to understand who are these consumers, what are their preferences, and at the same time, if we knew the drive distances and where they lived and what the preferences were, could we help him find a new store location, a second location? Yes and yes, absolutely. So we went through and did our data audit, and what we found was there's a great amount of information here, but somehow the client's address was never captured. And so without the address information, the geographic analysis was impossible. right? It prevented us from learning valuable insights, whether it was drive time or consumer preferences and the potential future location. So this is the world that a lot of people live in today. Let me show you what it looks like in an analytics environment. Okay, so the next step for us was converting Greg's report data into graphs. Okay, and right now what I'm showing you is 2019, 18, and 17. This is the revenue by month. This actually went all the way back to 2007, but for the purposes of this presentation, this is easier to look at. One of the greatest challenges when you look at broad data sets, right? You might have years and years and years of information in your software and your business, but navigating the time element, right? Determining trends within that time data is incredibly difficult without the use of some more advanced tools. So importing the data into what we use allows us to overcome the time challenge with large data sets instantaneously, right? And even in this limited example here, you can see that we've taken annual revenue performance to convert it into monthly results. And even though this is only for a few years, you can begin to see the trends in the business. Now imagine what you could do if you had the time of day when a transaction happened, right? This becomes even more rich. We can get down to the time of day when you're doing the best business. And that has applications for operations, for sales, marketing, you name it. Okay, moving on. So this graph is a deeper dive into the patterns of Greg's business. We really wanted to understand the patterns, right? What was going on in Greg's business. We wanted to look at volatility of sales. We wanted to look at the range of sales that he had, right? And begin to get some insights into maybe some seasonality, maybe what the customers were doing, et cetera, okay? And so this is a control chart. And you'll notice up at the top here, even though it's not live, control chart is something that you use in a production environment, a manufacturing environment, where you can see tolerances that are either within tolerance of your manufacturing or outside of tolerance, okay? And this relates to standard deviation, which I'll get into in just a second, the bell curve. So what you're seeing here is, in this control chart, very simply, this is for 2008 and the months in 2008, the average monthly sales, okay? And you can see that average is starting to decline. Overall trend is going down, okay? The second thing that you're seeing here is breadth, okay? This line and this line is actually relates to one standard deviation. Easier way to think about this as your maximum average sale for 2008 and your minimum average sale for 2008. As you look at this trend, you can see that, yes, the boxes here are dropping lower and lower. That's a nature of all overall sales declining. But you also notice the range, right? The range is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Over here, you had a very healthy mix of sales. You had some small sales, you had some larger sales, but down here you can tell that the overall level of sales and the transactions are compressing, okay? Not good. Last point on this, you can see that you have these orange ticks that are above the red line and the orange ticks below the red lines. These are outperformance, okay? Sales that were well beyond what you would get on average. And these are sales that are well below on a monthly basis what you would expect on average, even below your stated minimums, okay? And this shows that Greg had some customers that had some real buying preferences at certain times of year, beginning indication of seasonality. And at the same time, he was suffering through some pretty bad months, okay? So beginning to get some real insights here. Okay, moving on. Now, this is kind of a spin-off on the control chart that I just showed you. This is for seasonality, right? We prepare this for every single one of our clients when we can. Even though our guess is that most of you understand the seasonal nature of your business, even if it's just at a gut level, we think that everyone can benefit from seeing specifics. So in this case, we're taking the averages over the entire 11-year period. And you can see that January, February, March, kind of dips down, picks back up in March, gets pretty good in April, begins to decline right through the doldrums of the summer, picks back up in end of Q3, beginning of Q4, right? And as you can see that this business is pretty darn seasonal. These spikes right here just represent, again, that volatility that you saw before. Okay, some really good performance in terms of sales and some underperformance in terms of sales. Okay, so the great thing about this is that this graph for us is really important for sales strategy, right? We want to overcome seasonality. We hate seasonality, right? We want to make our bad months better and our really good months even stronger. And so that we knew with Greg that if we could change some of his habits in when we engaged customers, how we engage customers, we could begin to improve the slow season and really maximize kind of the strong season. And it worked very well. Okay, moving on to the next graph here. So not all visualizations are going to be super fancy and sophisticated. This is just a simple bar chart, but it's actually not your average bar chart because we're using colors in it for a very specific reason. So remember that we're dealing with, in this case, 11 years worth of data, which is typically a lot to work with, but for us, we can move in that environment very quickly. What we wanted to determine at this point in time was client retention, okay? Even though this is only 2018, just imagine we did this all the way stacked back through 2007, okay? And so the trick with using colors as opposed to using numbers or trend lines is that if you look at a big data set, okay, and again, imagine this is 11 years worth of data, it would be hard to see in a PowerPoint, but if you just focused on the colors and each customer had a unique color, you could very quickly determine the customers that have been with you for the long term, the customers that have left, the customers that have left and come back, and who are the new customers. So really at the push of a button, we could take 11 years worth of data and digest it and very, very quickly understand what's happening with the customer base, right? The blue here shows a continuance of purchasing by a specific customer. We've got some new customers. We've got some customers that are dropping off. Okay. So last slide in this section, but it's kind of a different spin here. So a lot of the slides that you've seen so far are really, it's an analysis. Okay, we can also develop tools that you can use in your business on a daily basis. So not all visualizations are static. In fact, they're designed to be really interactive. And in this sort of environment right here, when we're live, you can click on the month of March and this trend line will change. You can click on May and it'll change. You can leave them unchecked and it shows you the overall trend for this 12-month period. Okay, and what we're trying to do in this chart, and we had to remove some feature sets because of confidentiality, but what we're trying to do is we wanted to give Greg clarity around the specific purchasing behavior by customer to include how much do they buy, when do they buy it, what do they buy, what was the pricing, what was the spread in terms of how much they purchased and when. Okay, so anything that you might imagine that is useful in looking at customers, we built that as basically, think of it as a baseball card for looking at your customers. What customer you want to look at over what period of time, if it's not the whole time period, what are the insights that we can get? Okay, and this is an incredibly valuable tool. We can develop all sorts of different tools that people can use to immediately gain insights. The coolest thing about this is that this connects directly back to all of Greg's current and historical data. So the information is always accurate and it'll give him the best insights. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on here to the next section, which is enhancing existing data. And when we say enhancing existing data, another term that we use is data enrichment. So if you think about in the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about data that's within your four walls and data that lives outside of the four walls. So when we talk about data enrichment or enhancement it's as simple as saying, gosh, when someone comes to my counter to buy something, I want to make sure I get their address or their zip code, or maybe I want to ask them a question about which color they prefer. Okay, so we're building data that way. Typically, though, data enrichment is bringing in outside data, right, to make the data that you have a lot more powerful, right? It could be data from weather sensitivity data, it could be economic data, what have you. But in terms of how do you use this, the best way to think about it is you want to start with the end in mind. So when you get into the world of data and analytics, the trick to it is figuring out which questions do I want to answer of my data, and or have the data answer. Okay, and if the data that you have is not sufficient to answer your questions, well, which additional data do we need? Do I need zip codes? Do I need color preference? Okay, or where does the data live? Maybe you want to enrich or augment the data that you have on your customers. Where does that live? Well, it lives outside. You want to buy that data and bring it in, and you add it to your existing data. And so the last element there is and just, this is a more esoteric part of all of this and maybe a different presentation, but when you begin to add data, it all needs to link together. So we talked about early on these different data ponds that people run into. Make sure that when you bring in new data, it's not a brand new data pond. It's going to go into and mesh with the overall bucket. Okay, so in looking at in Greg's case, we thought it would be valuable to bring in some outside business data. So he's in the business discretionary spending space, and therefore is susceptible to the ups and downs of the economy and business sentiment. And so what we did was we piped in directly to Federal Reserve data showing GDP, both seasonal and non-seasonal adjusted. We can see it's kind of flat, we know that. We then piped into University of Michigan. We began to grab their economic policy and their business sentiment data. And the great thing about this is that while it would have been too much for this slide, we can begin to blend and overlay this data with anyone's revenue data. And what we're looking for are correlations between movements in policy sentiment or business sentiment. Gosh, it could be weather, it could be anything, right? To see how influential it is on your business. Okay, so by bringing this in and layering it in, we can begin to see the relationship between this external data and the internal data. Okay, and what it's going to do is going to let you realize, hey, there's a broader perspective here, and there's some broader influences on your business that maybe you're just not aware of. Okay, this is really cool. This is getting into an area that I really love. We call this geospatial or mapping. Okay, but while we're on the topic of data enrichment or enhancement, I had to show this to you. So I'm going to quickly cover a few examples. These are not related to Greg. Okay, but how the addition of other data sets, so using, of course, some more advanced tools, but allows you to see your business and your customers really in a whole new light. This map that you see is a drive radius map. It's 3 business locations around Richmond. The dark ring here in the middle is a 10-minute drive radius. This is 20 minutes, and this outer ring, if you will, is 30 minutes. And the cool thing about this is look at how granular this is. We can see going out to Short Pump how much this drive time is potentially extended, right, because of interstates or what have you. And it's really neat that you can get that level of granular information about drive times. But if you look at this and you sit there and imagine for a second, think how great it would be to know how long it takes your customers to reach you. Or if you're in a business services business, how long it takes for you to reach your customers, okay? And also we use things like this for identifying potential locations. Now here's a really juiced up version of what I just showed you. Okay, this visualization covers a lot. Now we've talked about mapping, we've talked about data enrichment, we've talked about grabbing addresses, we've talked about customer segmentation. This kind of brings it all together. So let me tell you what you're looking at here briefly, and it's a lot to take in, but here are your drive radiuses: 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you can see the really cool detail here of drive time. We then took the addresses of the customers that we had in the data set, and we enriched it. We said that address, believe it or not, is tied to a very specific consumer preference, psychographic tendency in terms of, it could be everything from political beliefs to estimated income to number and age of people in a household. And you categorize it into one of these segment names, which is well-established, very reliable. It names like Emerald City or Green Acres, people who live out in the country, or In Style, people who live in the city, or Metro Renters. That's actually what I am. I'm a Metro renter. I live in the city of Richmond. And we can take all of these addresses and we convert them into who are these people as consumers. Okay, and then what we can do is we can overlay them on this drive radius map and figure out within a 10-minute radius, what's our revenue per year? What about in a 20-minute radius? What about within a 30-minute radius? And even more importantly, we can begin to say, of these different segments, what's the revenue associated with each one of these segments? Okay, and we can go on, and this becomes even more powerful in other applications. But as you might imagine, this sort of information can really change how a business begins to think and act. Okay, let's move on to the next portion here. Okay, building blocks for a roadmap. A roadmap is simply moving from point A to point C to point B, or whatever your order is, things that you want to accomplish with your business. And with respect to what we do, okay, and especially when we're looking at data, some of the things that I'll leave you with is, and everyone can use this, is just remember, when you're developing a roadmap, make sure that you're developing a plan for getting good data, okay? And when we're moving beyond the data stage and getting into I'll call it the business stage of this, we're creating key performance indicators, KPIs, or business metrics. What are business metrics? Business metrics are simply things such as gross margin. It could be gross margin percent rather. It could be the number of telephone calls that you receive in a day. It could be how many widgets you produced during a certain week, right? So those are KPIs. Those are things that run off of our data and act as a guide for the management team. Okay, then you want to use a tool. It could be Excel, it could be your existing software platform, it could be something more advanced to actually show, right? To show the KPIs to the stakeholders. Okay, and then lastly, if you're going to go to the trouble to do this, and by the way, it's well worth it, make sure that your people use it, right? And that they live it and love it. Okay, so develop that culture and discipline of using data and using KPIs. So those are the basic building blocks. What about launching a roadmap? What you're looking at here is a roadmap. So everything that we do is completely digital, right? We used to have analytics, and then a roadmap would live in a Word document. Now everything that we do lives in a digital environment and a dashboard environment, okay? And so what we did with Greg was we identified the high-level changes to his business that would have the most impact based upon our conversations, the data, and the analysis that we perform, right? Enhancing his go-to-market, or enhancing the value proposition, or increasing sales activity, or upgrading systems. We then categorized the changes based upon business function. Was it operation? Was it sales? Was it marketing? Then we defined the objectives for each one of those, right? Were we integrating data? Were we planning? Were we reducing seasonality? Were we transforming the perception that the customers had of us, okay? And then you'll notice we had an accomplishment here, which is we accomplished visibility, or clarity, or growth, or focus, okay? It could be as simple as capturing new data. It could be changing a business process. It could be implementing a new marketing program, okay? Anything. And then lastly, it's scheduling these projects based upon what we know about the business, for example, in terms of seasonality, but also more importantly, the resources that are available. So when you design a roadmap, a lot of times we say, well, gosh, here's a roadmap that we want to roll out, but we need $5 million in capital to do it. Our preference is, let's start with the resource that you have and maximize that, okay? All right, let's talk about integrating a roadmap, okay, or making it operational. What does that look like? This is a detailed version of what I just showed you. Okay, this is what that chart looks like, this one, if you click on it. Okay, and it converts into looking at what do we want to accomplish over what period of time, okay? How successful have we been in completing that task? And then when you click, you have a granular progress against goal. okay, and it gets really detailed, whether it's developing KPIs or designing a program. Okay, so these systems that we use are completely interactive and allow you to do a deep dive with just a click of a button. Okay, so in terms of integrating, we're going to monitor the efforts that we make and the results of the work. We're going to discuss the progress that we're making, or lack of it sometimes, hopefully in a collaborative and knowledge-sharing fashion, right? That's the whole point. We're going to identify, any roadblocks that might be out there. It could be you need more tools or more resources, or maybe there's some of the behaviors need to change, or maybe we're running into a skill set issue, right? Developing the strategies to navigate the roadblocks. And then lastly, what's really important is being adaptable. I don't think I've ever seen an instance where we've developed a roadmap and then over time we've haven't had to modify it. That's, I think, the case with any plan, right? So be prepared to be adaptable as you run across new data and new circumstances. Okay, so moving into the last portion here of, if you're interested to migrating to being data-driven, let's talk about that for a second. So based upon the data and the systems audit that we did with Greg, we knew where the data resided. We knew what we wanted to see. We knew where we wanted to go. Okay, and so the key is, for example, was like we knew that the marketing campaign on web traffic and conversion to sales and all that data needed to be in one place, right? In the case of Greg, his transaction data resided in one system. The email marketing data was in a different system. The web traffic was in yet another system. Okay, these different ponds that we talked about. So the next step for us was to pull it all into one place so that we could create a consolidated view of the business by integrating the data across systems, right? This requires some more advanced tools as well as some skill sets, but it's a great goal for everybody to have. And so the result of all this work is what we call a dashboard. And these were the key numbers that Greg needed to watch on a regular basis, right? It could be year-to-date sales, 6-month sales KPI, monthly sales KPI, web traffic. It could be, revenue versus website, okay? And so in this instance, the dashboard that we're showing you is linked to all of the different data sources that we mentioned, right? So that updates automatically. It's viewable from wherever Greg is. It could be at home, his office, it could be on his phone. So he knows the state of his business in real time. And more importantly, as does anyone else that he wants to share it with. And this is kind of an interesting little nugget here. And I know that when I'm speaking about this, we do this every day, but for the viewer and the audience, you might think, well, gosh, this is a lot, or how would I interpret all of this? And so what we do for Greg is, and by the way, this is just one dashboard that we would use with Greg, but what we do is in a lot of ways, we are his outsourced chief business analyst, right? Or chief information officer, as Ian put it. And so on a monthly basis, we go through all of the dashboards and all of the data in detail, right? Which we can see very easily. And then what we do is we create a podcast with our full analysis and interpretation and next steps and things that we want to have him work on, right? Including looking at his progress on the roadmap, including looking at the data that we're viewing about the business. And the great thing about that is he can take that podcast and he can listen to it while he looks at his dashboards, and he can do that at his convenience and whenever he wants to. So it's a lot like having his own private business news channel. It's very effective, works very well. That's not going to work for everybody, but it's just an example of some of the things that can be done. So end of the day, while all of this looks like it's success, and it's, it is important to keep in mind that all the effort and the resulting visualizations that you see here, it's not enough, right? And so the behavior oftentimes needs to change to reap the full benefits of using an environment like this. So the people and the processes need to be in place to ensure that KPIs are reviewed on a regular basis and that they're actively used in making business decisions, okay? And the KPIs, by the way, they need to cascade through your entire organization to ensure that the individual goals and definitions of success are, one, they're measurable, and two, that they're in alignment with the overall business. In our experience, this critical step is often overlooked. Okay, but just remember, right? You can have all the tools and all the data, but it doesn't mean anything unless the people within your organization are using it. So, in summary, for all of our clients, right, and for you, what we'd recommend is look at your data, look at your systems, right, and begin to understand which technology are we using and why. Okay, what is the data that is inside of it? All right, is it consistent? Is it complete? Is it accurate? How can we augment the systems and the data that we already have to make it better, to make it richer? Right? What are the gaps? Okay, what else do we need to be able to really understand our business? Right? In some ways, this is never ending. Right? More questions lead to more questions. Okay, how do we get to the point where we can begin to answer these questions? And lastly, with the roadmap, just remember, right? It's about people, right? How do you move your people to a data-driven world, right? It's process, it's tools, it's making sure that it's repetition, and that you're saying, hey, we really need to use this, and you get people on board. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone's time today. This is an exciting frontier. It's fast moving. We think that this is a game changer for every business, having speed to accuracy, speed to decision making, insights that are beyond your four walls. We think it's absolutely invaluable, and it's gotten to the point where, you know what, small, mid-sized companies, you can absolutely attain it. So thank you so much, and would love to answer any questions.
Well, that was a really good presentation, Jonathan, and I was really excited to see how you can put to work the data that we're collecting for our customers, because we've been really working to expand networks. Networks we see are 3 times larger now than they were in the past, and it's really phenomenal how much information people have now about what's going on in their business from all the Internet of Things devices that are collecting information about what's taking place in their business, phone systems that are now plugged in and recording information about call volumes, even wireless networks that can tell you how many people are in your business. So all of those things are those data ponds that you've been talking about, that sort of are an island of their own, and this really pulls it all together. Just want to open it up to the audience. It looks like microphones are muted, but if anyone has any questions, I can unmute some of the guests' microphones, and we can chat if there's any questions that are out there with the group.
Hi, this is John Didinsky. I just want to compliment the presenters. I think it was very useful, very valuable information, and I intend to share it with some of my clients.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's great. We really appreciate the feedback. Well, this is a recorded webinar, so after we wrap up today, I'll send out a link, and that'll make that sharing process that much easier.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I guess, Jonathan, I do have one last question. What would sort of getting started look like with your firm? Can you give me just sort of a brief ballpark on what that would look like?
Yeah, sure. It's really easy. What it typically involves is when we encounter companies that are speaking with us, it falls into really kind of 3 different buckets. It's folks that are looking at, for example, something that might be a drag on the system. Maybe they're having margin compression in their business, or maybe they're interested in figuring out how do they take their company to the next level. Or, of course, we run across companies that say, how can we have a data analytics quandary, or we want to roll out analytics. How do we do that? And our methodology is that we always start with conversations. right? And we start with conversations, and at the same time, what we do is we ask for some data samples. And what that allows us to do is, quickly understand a lot more information about the business. And getting started is super easy. In terms of the pricing that's involved, our pricing starts at about $1,000 a month. And that includes consulting and includes different levels of analytics that clients might need, and the process to onboard somebody can be as quickly as a few days. So it's a simple process, but because we are a data analytics shop and we are a consulting firm, we blend obviously the conversation and diligence component with working with management teams with looking at the underlying data.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you providing that insight into that key data point of just how accessible this is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again, Jonathan, and
Sure.
Look forward to working with you further.
Yeah, thank you, and sorry about the audio difficulties. I appreciate it.
No worry. Okay. All right.
care.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.